Hello and welcome to a new installment of the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast. We are talking today about The Fall of Night, our season 2 finale. Once again, it's all three of us. Finally, it took us long enough. And we are three newbies from Europe who have watched the show for the first, for the second, and for the upteenth time. And as usual, we start with a little bit of an introduction question. And since it's a Christmas season, both for us and for the Babylon 5 crew, our question today is, what is our favorite Christmassy or wintry beverage? How about you, Layla?
Oh, yeah, start with me because I have a lot. Because sometimes I love Christmas sometimes I love Christmas. That's a good thing to say. But I love this classical German stuff like what is Glühwein in English? Mulled wine. Mulled wine. I love that in all kind of different tastes. I have recipes where I make it at home. I love to buy it at the markets. Then what I also really love is in the weird small, no, not even a small town, but in the weird town where I studied, there was one place at the Christmas market where you can get warm beer in Bochum. It's like it sounds terrible to have a warm beer, but this beer comes from Belgium, so it doesn't have all of the German rules, so it tastes like raspberry. It is super foamy, and then you get it in warm, and it's super nice. I love that. So mulled wine, warm beer, and basically also anything you can do with cinnamon. I love hot chocolate, especially hot chocolate with a little bit of rum in it is great. There are so many more. I probably I would still be talking tomorrow because I love all of these things. Right now, actually, I mean, I just mentioned all of these things and I haven't had any yet because I drink a lot of tea. And lately, my stomach was so sensitive that I only had my tea. But tea is also very great. So anything that's hot, basically. Oh, what's also really great is hot apple juice. You can actually, if you take apple juice, not the clear one, they're a little bit, what is Trüb? You know, the one that's
The
not
natural one.
the natural one. And you heat it up, and then you add cinnamon, maybe a little bit of nutmeg, cardamom, and also a little of piman probably, and just heat it up. Not cooking, just heating. That's also very great. And maybe I do that today because I still have a little bit downstairs. So yeah, I love Christmas drinks. Did I mention that?
How about you, Meike?
Well, I have to differentiate between inside and outside. Inside, I drink most of the time. I mean, you have seen it probably on YouTube and several vids that I'm drinking quite a lot of tea. And of course, in winter and at Christmas time, it's the perfect season. It's spikes up with the ratio quite a lot, which is why I usually buy quite a lot of tea in this at this time of the year, to the dismay of anyone around me because I can't get past any stand with tea. So yeah. And if I go outside, which is not that much, but if I have the time and go maybe to a Christmas market, I am also in the league with mulled wine, though I take the children version with no alcohol. And in Bochum, I really love the Met, the honey wine they sell there because this is just delicious, and you don't get this often on Christmas markets. So I'm really happy that you can get it there.
I love that too.
Which is a lovely substitution for my earlier hot chocolate, which I like to drink. But since milk products turned into my personal kryptonite, I switched over to these two things. So Alex, you're the missing one. What is your favorite one?
I like hot chocolate. I don't have fancy. It's not such a big topic for me, unfortunately. But I do have a synopsis for you for The Fall of Night, and I think that might be necessary because our recording schedule is chaotic as always, which means that for both of you, I think it's been quite a lot of time since you actually watched the episode, and this is not one that you can easily put on repeat as well. So let me refresh your a little bit. like we already said, it's Christmas time, not only for us, but on the station. The year is once again drawing to an end, each season representing 1 year, and it's not really a festive time for anybody. Sheridan actually has all of the pilots out there training because the war is not over. In fact, it keeps escalating. The Centauri keep annexing more territories, keep attacking to create buffer zones, which is incredible sci-fi concept that is like very out there and would definitely not be 100% reflected in like multiple modern day world politics situations. So that's great. And this is mostly what he's been dealing with. Ivanova is dealing with that as well, adjusting to her more important leadership position that she's been in for just about a year now. And their job gets made all the more easier by more bureaucrats from Earth Alliance coming in and holding meetings and making deals. And as if all of that wasn't enough of an issue, there's also a ship that shows up, a non-heavy cruiser that has been heavily damaged and has been, by the looks of it, having its own show, which was basically Battlestar Galactica, but for Narn, the last surviving vessel trying to escape the invasion. And all of these things come sort of clashing in one place. But all of this is kind of more of a backdrop, because the real star of this episode, I think we can all agree, is Warren Keffer, who finally, after such a long time, comes to a head with his like season-spanning storyline of hunting down the shadow vessel, which is then also the last thing that we see for the season. So a lot of ominous things happening, and well, I think we just need to pick one of these lines of thoughts up and talk about it. Oh, of course we do so in first impressions. Meike, you are our first-time watcher, so I mean, Layla, your first impression is also going to be very interesting to me because this is the ultimate episode of season 2. But let's start with Meike as always.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, not easy. On one hand, there's a lot of things happening, and on the other hand, it's quite a few that felt more subtle to me. Like it's not like it jumps you in the face. And yeah, of course, a lot of annoying bullshit through the Ministry of Peace. Honestly, I was so happy when the major dude that was in this duo, like, yeah, I had the feeling, oh yeah, maybe he's not such a douchebag, and then like 10 minutes later, oh fuck you. Yeah, that was it's certainly not my episode at that point. And I honestly, I have to disagree with you. You just I'm not even sure I get your wordings properly together again. But the whole Kaffa plot in this episode, it was like, for me, like, oh yeah, okay, he's there again. Nice. He has some don't know credibility for his appearance in the opening, but I found it so boring. I don't know. Was just, yeah, congratulations, you finally found your little piece. I don't know if this was the most uninteresting thing for me of this episode. I know in general, and I can see that for the next season that it will spark quite a big development, but just for this episode, it felt really unimportant for me. Yeah.
This is where we learn something very important. Sarcasm does not translate well into English, apparently. Not just that we're on the same page, no, we all agree that Warren Keffer's plot is a complete side tangent to this entire episode and season as a whole. He dies, and it's not even worth mentioning. Possibly the most violent death in all of Babylon 5, where you get to see his melted face in the cockpit of the Star Fury. Small
Right.
details.
Honestly, I watched this one closely, and I didn't see that. That wasn't in my version. I just saw a big light, and he was like, ah, and that was it.
We're gonna pick up audition. So we are currently like probably on this side of the screen, and on this side I will include for both of you the Possibly
Okay.
just like a single frame. Like if it's just a light, depending on the quality you're watching this on, this might be all that you see. It's like it's not a big scene or anything like that, but they did invest in like a little bit of special effect to just make doubly sure that we all understand this guy is not coming back. He's not having a great time.
Yeah, that was the problem for me because as you said, yeah, he is dead. Because I was like, yeah, maybe he's dead, but because there was nothing really for me to see, just light and him screaming, and you don't necessarily scream because you're dying, just because you're
I think
scared or
like
shocked.
aside from the scene itself, the only confirmation we get is in the voiceover at the very, very end, where they're basically just talking about the fact that they picked up a piece of wreckage with this recording. And it's kind of, if he didn't die when he screamed, he was ejected into hyperspace and where nobody can ever find you. So it's an unfortunate thing.
And are you like, guys,
He's run off the future season.
just did
Miss it.
scream with him because I wanted to make sure that I remember the right face. I never realized he died.
I still had in mind, like, okay, it's not definite at this point because I didn't see the melting face. And I was thinking like, okay, maybe he maybe the Locust just sucked him in, and okay, you're becoming our next whatever slave, like Mr. Morden or something like that. Even though I can't imagine Kefir being like, yeah, totally, just to live, I'll do anything for you. But
You see, I can't imagine the shadows looking at Kefir and being like, oh yeah, this man is important enough that it would be worthwhile to turn him into anything.
but that's the point. He is not important enough.
Yes.
So he can slip through.
I mean, yeah, nobody would notice if he's there or not. Case there. The perfect agent. Guys, all right. So already your first impressions have derailed us sufficiently. This is fantastic. We wanted to continue with your first impressions on that basis.
I'm going to give you my first impressions from when I first watched it back then, years ago. Because actually that was an episode that always felt very special to me in my first rewatches of this, because we are still in the part of Babylon 5 that I've watched more than once, continuously. So this was really from the very first time, as I remember how we were watching it in my old flat when I was still living in a one-room apartment as a full-time student, and we had fought through all of this of Babylon 5, and this was where I thought, okay, now I'm interested, now it has me. Now I really want to know what is going to happen next. Now I have this spark, this where I'm totally invested in the universe and in all of the characters, and I think I convinced him to watch 2 more episodes, although it was already late at night and we had classes the next morning. I think it was something like that. So that happened for me in this episode. It didn't happen this time, but also because we stretched this second season through the whole year. We actually did that.
I wonder why.
I wonder why. Yes, it wasn't because of me at all. No, so this time it was not as bad, but or as intense, but I still have this feeling that in the end, the last 5 minutes at least, emotionally really bring this feeling that I've had so far in Babylon 5 together, and to a point where I really am like, okay, now the prologue is over and now the story can start, and now I want the story to start. Yeah, that's definitely in there for me.
Totally agree with you on that point. The prologue is finally over. It's now it's starting to get really interesting. Yeah, that's also my feeling.
It's very interesting because that is usually how people talk about the first season. This is always how I kind of had the impression of the show as a whole. But then on this past rewatch, I felt very similar to you. Actually, I had no issue getting back into season 1 at all. In season 2, partially, of course, because of our scheduling, but I think even just like going from episode to episode felt like it took a little longer to get going for me. And maybe this is just because in my head, this is already part of the big thing, and so everything is going quicker. But I think it also has this element that this was my biggest impression this time around, of this finale being very cathartic almost, because I think, Layla, you put it like this, there's a lot of bullshit happening on the station, and all of this is kind of coming to a head now. And with a lot of things like Sheridan's whole, army of light that we've been seeing over the past few episodes, it's always this, we are ready to fight the bad guys who are somewhere and somebody and doing something, but we can't really do anything concrete about that. And the Rangers are there, and they're these like great people who are very important, people assure me. Like Sinclair came back and told me that the Rangers are very important, but all they've done is send like one postcard from Nan back for Jakar, because he's the only guy that even remembered they existed and had them do something. So it had kind of this feeling of, okay, we are putting pieces into place, but I don't see quite what they're doing yet and what this is building up to. And now finally, we kind of get to see the scope that is behind this. So for me, this was a big relief watching this episode and being like, okay, this is sort of getting into gear as I remember it.
And I would
If
think,
I would put it into anime speech, I would say, yeah, the training arc is finally ending.
yes, and actually what I would like to add there is that I think this end kind of marks the point where even when I didn't know what would come next, where I realized this relaxed kind of daily life on the station is finally over. So what they tried to achieve with the ending of the first season where the president was killed, here I kind of really believe, okay, it's a new era. The relaxed, seeing how the station works, having day-to-day interactions will shift, because now it's over, and now it doesn't feel so much like a space sitcom, but like a real thing. Yeah, that is, I think, what I had. I had the suspicion, I watched it for the first time, that this would be the case. And I mean, now I know that more or less that was the case, yeah.
There's a terrible spoiler for Matt. I wanted to gaslight you into thinking it's going to return to everything being normal for season 3 the whole way through.
I would hit you if that would happen.
No worries. There are other shows where I feel this happens, but not this one. This one is taking a different approach, and I'm surprised, but I would say pleasantly surprised that even for you there was like now this lingering question: did Kefir really die or not? I think maybe this will become more apparent in season 3, but Babylon 5 has a particular way of telling its story. And setting up mysteries like that is definitely not one of them. If I've learned one thing about you specifically over these first 2 seasons, it's that you like looking for mysteries, and Babylon 5 doesn't set them up, at least not in a way that is very satisfying to you. Like there's many things about this show that I find quite enjoyable, but trying to put together pieces like that is not usually one of them. Like if this show tells you, and then Kefir got hit by a light of beam, you can safely assume he is dead and don't run the risk of him randomly popping up again.
And I mean, what I also found interesting there, and this is also not a major spoiler, it's not a spoiler at all for the plot,
Sure.
it's just that I'm a big fan of space horror. Like, horror is a thing, but in space it works so much better on me because it's a bit psychedelic, I guess. And we once discussed that we do not have a real horror episode anywhere in Babylon 5 for a certain type of horror that we were talking about. Because yes, they don't work with these mysteries, with these things where you put things together, with these unknown stuff. And I think, and that is something that we have to do maybe in the end or maybe after season 4, that we can pick that up later and talk about why they don't do that. Because I think there is a very ideological reason for the writer not to do that. Yeah, but that's for later.
But I think this is actually a beautiful segue for us to get into concrete episode discussions. We extensively already talked about the fact that, to everyone's surprise, Warren Kefir has died at the end there. But we do actually get a few appearances of him in this episode, and one of the first appearances is him hearing other pilots talk about the phantom, the demon, the shadow in hyperspace that they've seen. And he, the first half of the episode, he's kind of seen going to Zeta Squadron in the bar and learning a little bit about the fact that there is this rumor about an entity in space, darker than the blackest night, something that you wouldn't want to chase if it was your worst nightmare and something like that. Which I find interesting, like looking at your comment, because clearly there is a horror element here. The theme is there, just not for us as the viewer. It's just very much making clear, like, to these pilots seeing this, the way they describe it, they have been through a horror film,
Yes.
but the episode doesn't show it to us this way.
Yes.
The show doesn't show it to us this way.
Yes, I mean, I think I can say that because it doesn't spoil anything at this point. Because we have also once compared, for example, how we were introduced to the Minbari as viewers versus how humans in the universe were introduced to the Minbari. And they had this horror as well, while the show avoided us ever having it. And we were talking about whether we liked it or not. And I think, yeah, it's a way of dealing with sentient beings and with living things by the writers to not ever establish this kind of horror effect on purpose, probably for the viewer. Yeah.
It's definitely touching on something that we talked about, that this show makes a clear distinction between how people in the world perceive something and we as the viewer perceive something. And we've already gotten all these scenes of these, black ships destroying an entire Nan outpost and such. So on this level, they are still horrifying to us, but we've seen them often enough that to us they aren't this like boogeyman fairy tale anymore that they are to the pilots right now.
Although I would say that the mystery of these hyperspace beings is always mentioned, as we see in Kefir's dramatic death, I never realized. Just to remind us that it is still there and that in universe it is still a thing. But so far, I think also because we as viewers are given the information right from the start. I think the spider was revealed to us early in the season, in the first season or in the first episode or something. So it's always just a reminder of, yeah, these little humans there, they are still dealing with that problem, but you already have all of the information relevant for now. So it's just because to establish the problem, the episode with John Maynard actually would have been enough. So it's always popping up, but it's just, yeah, and they're busy with it and they can't figure it out anyway, but it is still there.
It's just we're telling the story on a different level, right? For us, as the viewer, the dread that I'm supposed to feel about this show isn't, oh, there is something scary in space. It's that Dylan and Kosh have told me there is an unstoppable force of ancient space beings that are preparing for a war that nobody else is prepared for. There is this unstoppable force looming that is coming on, which is just, it's a story hook. It's just a completely different kind of threat that they are establishing here. It's not scary per se in that way, which, yeah, I find it interesting that it jumps genre like that.
Yeah, so overall, I have to say it feels, kind of bad, a bit wrong even, how the story with Kefir goes and ends here in this episode, because you have no connection to this character. There was so few moments you saw him, you learned about him. I think the most impact I had in some way was, I think it was the Gropos episode where he was talking with the other guys, and that was the first time he really felt, or at least he felt a bit like a person. Yeah, on the other times, yeah, he was just there. So him on this hunt, you don't have the emotional part there. You don't feel with him. You don't, or at least maybe there's something wrong with me. But when he dies, it's just, yeah. So what? He's like a red shirt in Star Trek. Yeah, there's no reason to care about this character, which I think is quite sad, because his actions will turn into a big development. And well, or at least I'm predicting something like that. At least there's, yeah, it the impact, I'm not satisfied with that, because he is actually doing something. I'm not sure if I want to call it brave or just insane, but it certainly has something with it that you can't just ignore, or at least you shouldn't ignore. But the way it is portrayed, yeah, it doesn't have the feeling of importance or purpose.
I mean, for me, actually, the question that I always have when I have a character like that in any kind of show is just that I think, is that maybe even on purpose that we have a character whose death is kind of there and I mean, I don't know, maybe here it wasn't on purpose, but sometimes I feel like it can be when you have this military stand-in character like the soldier. And he is a person. You had like one scene where you saw him laughing or chatting with someone or whatever, but not really enough. So you don't really know anything about it. And then he does something super great and he dies, and you feel like there should be an impact, but there kind of isn't, because it kind of you kind of don't have this personal connection. And I think that questions a lot how we in general just view this decision of a person to join the military and how we see this soldier stereotype.
That's interesting to view Kefir as that, because I think in the very beginning, when he's introduced, we get to see him kind of all buddy with the leading staff, right? There's like 1 or 2 scenes where he's at the restaurant with all of them. And this would kind of, the way you describe it, Layla, now would kind of indicate the show recognizing, oh, that doesn't really work. Like, he is not one of the guys. He's not on the same level as them. So maybe we imagine him as soldier dude, as kind of this stand-in.
Yes, and I would also, when I see these scenes where he is hanging out with them, I just always have to ask myself, how many of these soldier guys that hang out with them sometimes for dinner and then disappear did they have? And how many of them did they send on missions where they got killed?
Yeah.
If you have a career like Sheridan, quite a lot of them. So
That's why you don't usually have dinners with them, right? Like, that's one of these things. What I find interesting, especially through this lens of him being kind of our entry point into this level of the casual guy, the grunts on the ground. There are only a few scenes in this episode, but we get to learn that there's a rivalry between the Star Fury squadrons, for example. Like, we always get called out, Zeta Squadron, Alpha Squadron is doing something, but here we learn, oh, Alpha and Zeta Squadron don't get along. Like, they're jealous of each other because one of them got new Star Furies and such. So there is like potential here to tell stories and develop characters. Like, we learned in the first episode that Keva had a girlfriend at home, and I could imagine that this is interesting. Like, how do you deal with a character that is just a normal soldier deployed in the middle of the galaxy who has family back home and has to deal with that, and like the communication delay with that and such? There are ideas here, but like you say, Meike, they aren't fully developed. And I think an important lesson here is trust your instinct. Don't immediately say maybe there's something wrong with you, because there isn't. If you feel this is valid, and not only because it's shared by us, but if we move away a little bit from just watching the show and look behind the scenes, there is a very simple reason for these observations that we've all made, which is that Warren Keffer is a studio node. After season 1, the studio decided this is a cool sci-fi show. You know what might make it better? A sexy pilot guy, like the Star Wars sometimes did. And so JMS, the creator, was essentially told, here's this archetype of a character, write him in. And one of the things that you learn very quickly about JMS as a writer is he'll do it, but he'll let you know, and he'll let everybody know if he's unhappy with the creative direction that he's gotten. And, to the question, is this intentional or not? Yeah, this is a shittily written character, completely on purpose, which makes me feel very bad for the actor who is not responsible for that and didn't get any great parts out of it. It's a little bit vindictive. But no, it's his arc kind of goes nowhere because nobody on this show really had an interest in leading this part forward. But I think it's still like much more productive to look at it through something like your lens, because then we can get something out of it at least.
Yeah, because what I was thinking, for example, was, I think we also talked about that when we talked about Stargate once, where you also have this colonel figures, and you just know from the moment they walk into the room, okay, he's gonna die. Like Colonel Sumner, I was like, he's not gonna make it. Nobody likes him, and he's so boring and flat and
That guy is not a main character. I can just tell. So
yeah. Also,
Person appears and you can already hear he's dead.
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, you could take that discussion further and talk in general about this whole soldier military sacrifice problem. But I think we have a lot of options for that later in the show.
Oh,
Before we continue, I would like to disagree. This is not a sexy character, and I'm not talking about his appearance.
I mean, yeah, the studio knows said to include one, and immediately everybody decided, no, we're not gonna do that. I don't want to imply that there was a casting process where somebody was, oh yeah, this guy looks boring and uninteresting. He's got the job, but I can't say that this isn't what happened. So, you know.
Actually, for me, he always has this. I mean, I know we are in the 90s, but for me, he always has this terrible 80s vibe. Like, I always want to give him a little bit more hair, and then he has to wear like a jacket with the zipper open and has to have hair on his chest, and that's the vibe I get from him. I'm sorry.
I found it so cute that in all of these scenes, instead of the open vest, every pilot had like a little scarf, like very colorful scarves for their squadrons. It's a very distinct outfit choice for a space pilot. I found it kind of neat. But okay, I think we are collectively ready to move on from this storyline. I mean, the big takeaway, and Mikey, you're completely right. You know, the cliffhanger of this season is, oh my god, the footage that Kefir had of this vessel got leaked, and everybody knows about these ships now. Right after everybody said, oh well, crisis averted. As long as nobody learns about these ships, we should be fine. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. But I would argue, like, well, sooner or later somebody would have made a recording of this, right? Like, there's no way Kefir is the only guy. There's probably like 100 non-pilots on exactly the same hunt right now, like trying to get that footage out. So who knows how bad have things will get because of this or of other reasons.
Yeah, honestly, it's something where I was thinking when it happened, like, why didn't they prepare for this? Or at least we haven't seen that they were preparing themselves for this occasion because, yeah, sooner or later, as you already said, it would happen. So if you know it will happen, you prepare yourself. And I really hope they did it, just didn't tell the watcher because, yeah,
I mean,
that would be stupid.
I think we can talk about this a little bit once we've gotten through the rest of the episode, but I would argue the way that this mysterious alien shit that poses a threat we need to be afraid of is reported on fits the narratives of mini packs kind of pretty well. I think if we put it together with their sort of propaganda, it starts getting a pretty cohesive picture. But before all of that happens, let's go to the day-to-day, the last day-to-day on Babylon 5, which consists in Sheridan once again yelling at an alien ambassador to calm down and, stop invading everyone. For once, it's not Jakar doing it, but Londo. So I don't know how you guys feel about this, but after this whole debacle of the end of the Non-Centauri War, where Londo was stalking around in his new uniform and new cape, it was nice to see him getting properly dressed down by the captain and getting told, like, what the fuck, dude? Like, can't you see that everything is still going downhill and it's all because of you guys? Like, you are the problem. How is this so difficult to get through?
Mm. Yeah. I was really sitting here and doing a little dance for Sheridan because, Lando really needed to get this told by someone. I mean, of course, I'm pretty sure Veer would have tried, but I don't think he would have gotten through his thick skull. I'm not sure Sheridan managed, but I think it's still something different when Sheridan tells Lando what kind of shithead he is. And Lando's answer, like, yeah, we're creating a buffer zone, is so not surprising because we already said that we all saw this coming when they started this bullshit. It's a kind of typical lame response. People will do where everyone knows, this is a big fat lie, but still not enough to do something, or at least for the most that still like to live in their happy little world and do nothing and hope for the best, as we see here with the Ministry of Peace.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the happy little irony is that we know Londo's true feelings on this. Like, the first thing he said when the Non-Centauri War ended was like, you're not just going to invade everybody else, right? Like, that would be a supremely shit idea. And Reefer was like, oh, yeah, of course, we would never. Like, we are just, maybe a little bit here and there. So, like, Londo himself clearly knows that this is a bad thing, argued that this is a bad thing, tried to talk everybody into this being a bad thing, and is now put into this position of defending why it's actually a very good thing. And that, for me, is a little bit of a satisfaction that I know that he's just bullshitting here, and I know how much this pains him, and he still does it.
Yes, but I also think or see actually that he always has this facial expression of someone understanding the system that he comes from, the system that he's in, and the position that he plays. For me, he always, in this discussion, he seems a little bit distant, which also probably makes it possible to even have such a way of arguing. But yes, he has. I think he sees why it is wrong and bad, and he would have wished for something else. But he's also in full acceptance of the kind of move that he has to make on the chessboard, basically.
In a way, you mention his position, and right, this is the core of his response, right? Like saying, well, Sheridan, you can tell me what you want, but I'm outside of your authority here. Your authority ends with Babylon 5, and I'm no longer just the ambassador to Babylon 5. I now speak for the Centauri matters in this galaxy, which are far bigger than that. And, this comes off as very arrogant, but at the same time, it might just be his awareness also that, yeah, this is my role to play. I'm a mouthpiece for Reefer now, and not much I can do about that.
Yeah, which also for me shows, in a way, of course, you can put this differently, but for me, it is he has no backbone. It's not like he has anything like these are my values, these are things I protect. No, he turns as the wind flows. No matter how things change,
And that's
not to be different, and that's really really a shame and highly sad to see.
it's also a real shame that the connection via Discord kind of bit the dust there in the second. So we will see how that turns out. But no, I think we got the gist of what you were saying.
Yeah, then there I was actually thinking of the analysis that we have established of Londo right in the very first episodes, that he just has this ongoing depression because his values that he once had have been proving wrong, and that the system where he knew how to exist in he saw that fail and reshape into nothing really. And so yes, he could have values against that, and he definitely is now like this person just following, just like this empty person. But I think we just here right now see, I mean, I always, with this first discussion that we had, I always see this war as the absolute escalation of his complete escalation that started as personal emotional escalation that we already saw in episode 1 actually.
Mm.
And yeah, now we just see how brutal it can get. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, one impulse I have is to tell Lando, hey, this is what you wanted. You wanted to have Centauri back to its prime time. Now you're in a position of power. That's what you wish for. Are you happy now?
Make Centauri great again. Oh, what? I have to kill the neighbors? No.
yeah, like the more classic thing. Let's make it written. Why doesn't my family count to Thanksgiving anymore? I don't understand. I just explained to him how they are all just voting for a global conspiracy. Oh well. But if we are talking about the inner workings of Londo's mind, this is something that Sheridan is also concerned with, and we have this like little additional scene where after he dresses down Londo properly, he turns to Garibaldi and asks him, well, what do you think about this? You're just about the closest thing that Londo has to a friend, which I just find nice that this is acknowledged here. This is not just something that we see. And maybe we can talk about the way Garibaldi puts it is there's not much that you can do with him as long as he's this afraid. Because he basically says, well, Londo is in over his head. He knows that. but he's just going to clasp on, and there's not much you can do to change his mind. And to your point, Mike, it would be fun to tell him this is this is what you wanted. How do you feel now about this? But I think Garibaldi also tells us like that wouldn't really achieve much though, because he's just terrified at this moment. He doesn't know how to get off.
Of course, it wouldn't help with anything. Just my inner peace would be established by telling him how much of a shithead he is.
I mean,
Because yeah,
it might be a very therapeutic thing to get like all the ambassadors of the smaller species together to do this, just so that they have some unity. I will say, I think it's legitimately cool that we get to see the ambassadors of the Drazi and the Pagmarant here just
yeah.
doing their job. Like for the first season especially, they're usually kind of funny side characters and caricatures, and now they're just like sitting down very seriously and saying, well, we got attacked. Babylon 5 is a place that is supposed to negotiate, so here we are, please help us, which is just nice to see them in a series setting.
Yes, and we have this clearer presentation of what the Babylon 5 is meant to do, to help people to connect with each other, to find a balance. And of course, there's no solution here to this problem, but to see these two be more than just funny characters in the background gives the whole universe more depth.
We definitely also see why we do need a place like Babylon 5, because who else would react to this conflict, and where else would the full consequences of this conflict and of this war actually be visible?
And to see that they are taking this opportunity to say, we need help, because in past episodes and like in our 1.0 versions of history of Babylon 5, asking for help isn't a thing that has been established on a big scale so far. So seeing people doing what we would consider normal, to just ask for help, is really sight for sore eyes here.
Yes, but also I think it is normal, for example, in our universe, in our world. Sorry. It is normal in our world nowadays that you ask for help. That, for example, when you are attacked, you ask the United Nations for help, or something like that, because we have already established this whole institution, and we have a protocol, and we have precedence cases of how it worked and what did work out and what did not work out. And it is legally already fully organized. And I think in Babylon 5, the thing is now asking for help there is the first case of that ever happening, and there's no legal framework. So we are there live while this framework needs to be established. And I think that is very, very interesting.
And I think one of the notable things that we see here is they do this despite the war breaking out. Like one of the big changes is that we've kind of seen Babylon 5 fail as this place of peace because it didn't prevent this war. And, there is a version of this story where every member of the Babylon 5 council then immediately says, well, the great experiment didn't work. I guess we just go back to business as usual, and they don't come there. And I think this leads us to the next subplot, where I believe ultimately this is what we see Earth do in this situation. Like all the other species are coming to Babylon 5, sending their ambassador and say, hey, we are getting attacked. Babylon 5 is supposed to help with that. Can't we work something out? Meanwhile, Earth is over here, completely ignoring what Babylon 5 is doing, just sending a diplomat to unilaterally make a deal with the Centauri and go fully isolationist and just not deal with this anymore. Like completely missing the point of this station that they've built.
Yes, and if you think about it, it's not just ignoring the purpose of Babylon 5, but ignoring everything that happened until then in this war. I mean,
Yeah.
we know they used weapons that have been considered, like the worst you can do, and there's no consequence. Just, oh yeah, you did something like shaking hands with the devil himself. We don't care. Let's be friends.
Yeah, it's very much this. There seems to be a clear winner in this conflict, and we're gonna be on the winner's side. And then all the ethical issues or international law that's yet to be written will be written by the victors. So we're basically safe if we just put ourselves in the right spot. Very much doing what you, Meike, also said. Londo is doing right now. Just turn whichever way the wind is blowing for the moment.
Yes, and in this process of ignoring what scandalous things happened, they're compromising the purpose of B5
Yeah.
and saying, yeah, we don't need all this. We just do our own shit, and yeah, and at the same time, through the existence of B5 being managed by Earth, by the humans, it's like a double fuck you. Like, yeah, we have the power, and we want to sit you all together and talk, but this doesn't go for us. We just do our own thing.
I mean, we aren't privy to these discussions that take place, but I mean, what we're talking about obviously is the arrival of mini packs with Nazi grandpa and sleazy other Nazi guy, who both get beautiful talking points, I think.
Yeah,
Layla, you first.
before we switch away from Londo and the Centauri
Oh,
War
sure.
moment, there's one other thing that I want to talk about, and that is Vir and
Oh, yes.
at the
The actual heart of the episode.
what's his name?
Linear?
Lanier, Vir and Lanier at the bar at the beginning.
Awesome, and I can totally feel it. Like, I mean, they're meeting. Both of them are talking about their own stuff, not really listening to each other, but both of them that just everything out there annoyed with. And at the end, next time, tomorrow, yeah, see you off.
Yeah,
This. I really loved this.
just this need, just this need to vent. And also, I find it just when you think of the which two kind of species and cultures are meeting there, it's super funny because I don't think it's a match that you would immediately imagine. So that's super cool that they have a connection that works. Like, I feel safe to vent to him, It's my thing that relaxes me. And also, I think that that scene is a quality that reminds me of the motorbike scene, also with Lanier, actually.
Yes.
Because it's really, I think, what Babylon 5 was built for, that we have these kind of friendships, these kind of connections that are so unlikely but are still happening. And I think it's beautiful that the show even pictured these before the big tragedy happened, so that we see, I mean, in the first season we said that we had the motorbike scene, and we also had the scene where Lanier and Londo went drinking. It's always with Lanier. He's a great character, but that is always with Lanier. But to show that this potential is there, and also this potential is not a result of this war. Like, it was there before, so it's not like we have to suffer to get something good. No, we just have the good things. We just suffer anyway. I think that's important to just not say, okay, because bad things happened, now we have good things. To have it always established, and then also that they keep showing that. Although now it gets really dark, and we are still shown this. I love that.
It's so beautifully written also in a way where all of these lines are in there. The ambassadors doesn't even look the same anymore, doesn't tell me anything anymore, where obviously they're just venting to each other and not really talking to each other. At the same time, both of what they are saying is true for both of these ambassadors. Like, Glenn doesn't look the same anymore. Londo doesn't look the
Yeah.
same anymore. Both don't. And exactly to your point, Layla, they have a completely universal experience, which being an aide to an important politician sucks. And when things get harder, it sucks in very specific ways that, regardless of culture, are completely the same. And yeah, this is this potential that would be there if only this is the level we would be talking about, and not these convoluted politics on top of that. I think on some level it's also a little bit more of a fuck you to Warren Keffer, because this is a scene. It's the first time we see these two characters together, I 100% believe that since season 1, they've been doing this every single week repeatedly. Like, this immediately gives me so much depth and investment in their little bar meetups. And we are not alone in that. Like, this is one of the most iconic things that happens in this show. And everybody, you could probably find more fan fiction about their meetings than anything else happening in this show, because it would be a fun project. Just take all the important story events and write them down as these two characters would be talking about it.
Yes.
Then we just need a special appearance by Nathoth and it would be brilliant. That's a whole different show for you.
Yeah. Oh, I want to read this fan fiction. Please, someone write it for me.
There you go. This is our lurker question for today. Imagine. No, very good reminder on that. Now the right time for Nazi Grandpa. Beautiful.
Yeah. There's a bit of my question. I'm not quite sure if I would call the Nazi Grandpa. I mean the other guy that is with the Night Watch. I'm totally with you there. But did I write down his name? Was it important enough for me?
I think we have Mr. Lance and somebody else. Mr. Lance being
Yes.
Grandpa.
Yes. And to a certain point, I can understand his argumentation that he is. We don't have that much of background of him. But I can totally understand if he is someone that extensively experienced war, that he is so afraid of that happening again that he would even do the wrong thing to prevent this. On a logical level, I can understand that. Therefore, I'm not quite sure if I would consider him in this Nazi direction, which is just.
I can tell you why, and then we can.
First, he has more background information.
Boy.
Apparently. I would also definitely consider him a Nazi, and actually, for me, he's the more dangerous Nazi than the other one, because the other one is just so clearly evil and manipulative. He's almost a caricature for me.
Or is that?
He's like a figure from 1984, And for me, actually, the terrifying thing about Nazis in general, or about this Nazi grandpa, is that I also can understand a lot of his argumentation, and emotionally, I can understand where he comes from. And he's not evil, and he's not crazy. He's just a normal person that just takes all of this information and ends up in this very, very dangerous place where he just is willing to do all of these sacrifices for this kind of peace that just is not an option at that point anymore, and is just sacrificing others. So because he is so relatable, actually, it's to some degree, I find him so much more dangerous with his ideology in the end.
I wouldn't consider him any less dangerous. It's just the term Nazi that is problematic for me. And I mean, even the Night Watch guy, I'm not sure I would put in the Nazi direction, more in like the Stasi guy from.
More the different kind of authoritarian.
Yes.
I just don't see the need to make a difference there, but we can establish these differences.
The problem for me is that maybe I missed this or forgot it, but I do not see this open racism and like we are the best, and we have this special version of humanity that is the best and everything else is trash, that needs to be eradicated. I don't see that there. They are both bad people, horrible people that should never get an ounce of power. But I don't. Yeah, this connection just feels wrong for me. What it stands for.
I mean, I can definitely go ahead.
No, do you want to give background information to them or another point? Because I have
not background information, just how I interpret these characters, because now you two are talking about this word that I introduced for reasons.
Yep.
Both of you having reasons that are different from mine.
I also have reasons why I think both are actually Nazis, but you can.
I mean, I'm very happy that we are talking about these definitions, and feel free to have this discussion. I just want to very quickly give my reason why I introduced these words, and then you both can disagree with me for different reasons. I really like the Stasi comparison, because a lot of what especially the younger guys talking about is this enemy within, and all this paranoia internally, which certainly is more associated with that side of especially German history than the Third Reich part of history. Um, the reason, the distinction for me comes in: is grandpa being genuine or not? If he really is somebody who is terrified for his grandchildren because he has all of these experiences with war and such, I can definitely see the argument that we can say, either to Meike's point, okay, I would have an issue then calling him out as a Nazi, because, using this term inflationary is difficult. I can also completely see the point of saying, well, the reasons aren't that important. In fact, by his action, he still falls in this camp. Both of this makes sense to me. I'm choosing this term specifically because I don't buy it. I don't buy that this guy is genuinely afraid, because every single talking point he has, and specifically one that I'm hung up on, are things that sound like something grandpa might naturally say, but then they feel pinpoint selected to talking points that I keep hearing from a certain ideology. For example, I mean, obviously, think of the children is like one of the most common talking points that you tend to see out of one ideological camp. For me, even more important is him coming to the space station and reminding this random Earth Alliance member, do you know that it's Christmas at home? Do you remember the Christmas market at Geneva, where they're singing these beautiful, like, the peak of European culture is at home? Like, how do you not celebrate? Isn't this terrible and tragic? And especially like this illusion for me, like, oh, think of Christmas. Nobody says Christmas anymore. It's always happy holidays, because we need to be so damn inclusive nowadays. This is the part where I'm getting like, you're not really like, you're not the guy that actually goes to Christmas parties at this time of year. You are at the space station spouting talk about Christmas parties other people ought to have. And this is where I think, no, this sounds more like propaganda to me, and then I push it into the specific Nazi camp, because these talking points line up. This is just how I'm getting at it, which is different from what you two guys have been doing, but I like it also.
I have to admit, I totally forgot about this scene. But yeah, now that you put it, I can see where you're coming from.
And what I also have to think about then is this, just the kind of position from Earth, that he kind of defends there, of sacrificing so many other species, cultures, worlds to this war, in the hope to keep Earth safe, which is also just a completely wrong logic, like we have seen in history and also in recent politics. So often that's not how it works. You cannot appease someone like the Centauri or something like that. That never works. But also just the willingness to sacrifice so many people and so many lives, so just that Earth is safe. And that is something, just to be able to make these decisions, millions and billions of lives, but my home planet is safe. I mean, that was really was what was kicking it over for me. And I mean, I personally always had to think about what I knew from conversation. I mean, it's not really my first-hand experience, it's just what people told me. But what I know about conversations with my great-grandmother, who also would never have never ever seen herself as a Nazi, for example, and she doesn't have anything against Jews, but she's mad at them for working in a bank.
Mm.
I was this level of, I don't really, I mean, are we super friendly? Super, no, I don't mind them, but they're weird.
Do they have to be there?
Yeah, that's the same thing with. I don't have anything against people with a different color. I buy my fruits from them. Yeah, it's.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm laughing just because, it's not funny. It's really not funny, but also,
Yeah, it's more like a hysteric laugh that happens, that just creeps up, because will you handle this? How do you do?
But I think
Because I certainly don't.
indirectly, this is how you also arrive at the sort of human superiority ideology that we go looking for if we call them out as that. Oh, well, the Centauri didn't really commit a war crime. Like, it's fine to make a treaty with them because they just bombarded Narn. Like, those aren't real people. So, like, how bad could that be? Like the the Geneva Convention doesn't actually mention aliens at all, so
It
it's
is
fine.
it is this super ice cold mindset that you also have to have if you were like a Nazi and working on your desk and ordering the death of millions from your desk when you are there like, okay, so they bombarded a planet and they sent them back into the Stone Age and killed millions, but technically we don't have a law that forbids that. You know, this kind of mindset is there in there, yeah.
All that being said, I think it's still like very valuable to think about, like, do we assign
Yeah.
a note like that to these characters? Because it's absolutely also true that these terms get thrown around a lot, and they lose meaning if everybody does so.
They kind of lose meaning, but I also always feel if we have someone dangerous or someone who is like friendly and harmless and careful, but on the tipping point, I rather use the word to make clear where we are than be like, yeah, you know, you're a friendly racist and you probably won't kill someone yourself, so it's fine. And also what I find, but we can establish for discussions another term for that, because for me, I mean, I am an I've studied this out of interest, like the whole phenomenon of fascism and where it came from a lot, and I'm still in it, so I'm definitely not finished. It's just a project going for the novel that I'm writing, so earlier in history where it started. And with the definition of fascism that I mostly like to work with, and it's not a finished one yet, for me, actually, from the mechanism how it works, the system in the Stasi system, for example, also is fascism. And Soviet Russia was fascism, and Russia now invading Ukraine also is fascism. So I also, for me, the term there would also fit. But we can also establish another term if it's like not this racist-based totalitarian and fascism thing, but the other version. We can use another term for that. But I usually see these fascist tendencies in both extreme directions, I want to say.
I think the solution to this is always just to highlight what are we specifically talking about, because like there is no sense in us coming up with a glossary, however well researched it is, because people will have their own connotations with these terms. So just
But that's just why I was jumping on it, because
yeah,
for me, in that sense, they belong together, although they have differences, yeah.
absolutely.
But it's just, for me, it's just usually if I hear this term, I just go for the breaks and, okay, what is it exactly we're talking about? Because on the other hand, it's if we use this term to describe something different than what it was used to until now, it kind of feels like disregarding the things that happens, the victims that had to endure these horrible acts. So I'm always really, really hesitant and tiptoeing on ice if this term is dropped.
I think this is one of these opportunities where we can also, use to our advantage that we have specifically the German background. But I think this is a phenomenon that you see elsewhere in the world as well, where a lot of times using this term is a very quick way to end a discussion, because you don't talk about Nazis. It's a no-go topic. So if you label somebody that and then someone comes around the corner, well, but, and then tries to relativize, it's immediately, why would you do that? Like, why would you start, looking closer at the motives of a Nazi? Like, are you crazy? They are just, evil incarnate, and that's it. And I think in a lot of discourse, this is a very quick way to shut down discussions and just label something as such over the top, and then just
Yes.
say this in and of itself disregards any other discussion that you can have, which might be a difficulty that we, with our own Erinnerungskultur, have brought on ourselves. So that's just great and fantastic.
I mean, on the other hand, I'm sometimes also annoyed when people tiptoe, like in a professional discussion, kind of people tiptoe around it too much. Like, maybe you have to cut this out later, or we will see. But for example, what she told you like 1 or 2 weeks ago when we were introduced to this term of crony capitalism, which was just a way of avoiding saying fascism. So if you kill millions of people for economic interests, you suddenly don't call it fascism anymore, and the discussion changes, and it's like, really, is that like is it better to kill people for that reason? I mean, I'm not so sure, but yeah, it's a
I mean,
lot of
that's just, if our result of all this discussion is going to be, yeah, even in an academic setting, if you just end up redefining new terms all the time, it can become nonsensical, then yeah, no big deal. Like, as much as you might worry about the anti-intellectualism of movements like Home Guard and other extreme movements, there is definitely something to it that if you let professors talk long enough about a subject, they have a tendency to also uh, talk it into pieces. Also, like,
yeah.
this,
Our cat just can't decide. She had like her front paws on me and her back paws on him, and she just can't find a place to sit.
so she's being a little bit. She thinks all of this is moving us too far away from the actual episode, which might be fine. So now that we've decided how and why and where to label these two characters, both of them have some very great times. Maybe let's start with the grandpa, with Mr. Lance, and just what are some of your favorite scenes with Mr. Lance? My personal favorite is him getting ambushed in a corridor by Jakar.
And he's sneering himself out of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But I think it's this like strongest indicator of what's actually happening here, right? Like they have this treaty, the treaty is gonna happen, it doesn't matter how. And he's just there to do the formalities. And before we went into the Veer and Lanier scene, this is what I wanted to get at. We aren't privy to the scenes that Lance has with the alien ambassadors, but these must be the most frustrating discussions in the whole episode, right? Because he's going to these people who are currently under attack and has all of these diplomatic talks with them. But none of that actually matters because he knows the result. He knows that he's going to make this deal with the Centauri. So what's the point? What's the point of this like exercise? It's all just for show.
Yeah.
Which for me is also one of these points. Like if this guy was really just concerned about making this happen, if he was just concerned for making peaceful children, peace in our time, beautiful historical line right there, then why do all this show and dance? Then why make this all in the most propagandistic way possible? It's just it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's a big. Now I will present you a magic trick, my middle finger.
Yes, it's bad.
Yes. Yeah, but the moment when Jakar appears, it's this. You can immediately see this horrible way of trying to get out. Like I have to go. I don't have the time for right now. Honestly, if he would be interested, he also would have talked to Jakar and or at this moment said, yeah, I can't. Let's have a meeting then and then.
This man went on an interstellar journey for these talks, and now he wants to tell me he can't make 5 minutes extra time for a talk.
Yeah,
Like, come on.
Yeah.
cooking is your fucking job.
Yeah.
And also, I think there also it doesn't work for me anymore to say that, yes, maybe he just doesn't want to get into diplomatic problems with Earth government or something, because this was so unofficial. If he had talked for 2 minutes to Jakar there, no one would have ever known.
That is
Yeah.
also true. Like this, if he wanted to make something work with his position, he definitely could. I also like the the way he has his appearance near the end there. But before we get to the whole debacle of the shit actually going down, his younger colleague, who is not actually from Minipax, he is just part of Nightwatch, where we don't even know like how does this fit into the political structure, which funnily enough the AfD is trying to get rid of its own youth movement because it's become too radical for them. So this tendency to have this like very because they still want to keep it around and just found also a new one. So this tendency to have ever more bureaucratic institutions somehow that relate in nebulous ways, very typical for some reason for this sort of ideology and this sort of government, or this kind of ideology coming into government and just creating more institutions that are ill-defined and therefore can kind of do a whole lot of things without anybody questioning it. And this is how we get the wonderful and for me probably hardest to watch scene of this entire episode, which is poor Zach at the Nightwatch meeting. This poor man who really
Doesn't know what he's doing.
he just like all he wanted is 50 credits a month, and somehow he's like back in high school in a classroom. Everybody is looking at him. He's embarrassed. It's terrible for him. My God, what a terrible scene for our poor Zach.
Now that you mentioned the junge Alternative of our AfD party, actually, it's oh no, I cannot say that. It can get me into legal trouble.
Well, that's unfortunate for you, Mike.
But I have,
Well,
no, just without getting into trouble here, I definitely had a personal experience with a person that made me. You become very, 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 very conscious in that Zach scene because it's just he just had no idea what he was doing and it was terrible. Yeah.
your own personal Zach, essentially.
Yeah, I can't get
Not as well-meaning.
Yeah, it points out so many problems with systems like these, because he is essentially doing in some way the right thing. Yeah, I remember it was about, I think, some vendors complaining about something where Zach was like, yeah, why should I report this? This just, yeah, like a bit it's whatever it was what he said is a bit like complaining about the weather. Yeah, you just complain because you can't change anything anyway. And yeah, he's totally right not reporting this because this is absolute bullshit. But there's no one in this meeting that is like, yeah, he's right. Why do you want to have something reported like this? No, everyone is keeping their mouth shut and through their silence agreeing with this night watch asshole what he's saying, that you have to report anything, and that Zach can't fend in this moment for himself alone, and on the long term how the night watch is working, we see at the end of this episode by probably the named vendor in this scene getting closed.
I think for me, a very important thing is that we see Zach in this terrible position, but he is not the one that actually reports the ship being there. He's not the one that actually causes the issue. We now get this introduction. There's a lot of these people because while I think Babylon 5 does a lot of things really well with portraying Nightwatch as this organization, as this, ideological gateway into the whole pro-Earth movement that we've seen, Zack as a character is kind of this lovable goof. And there is easily this impression of, oh, well, of course he would fall into their trap because he's kind of an idiot. Surely I, as the viewer, would never do that because I am much more aware. I paid attention in history class, and even though it's not exactly the same thing, it always reminds me of seeing people talking about deprogramming folks from cults, or looking at the history of cults. Where always the first thing a professional will tell you, everybody is susceptible to be caught in a cult. There is medical doctors, there's politicians, there is people who have had a good academic career, who have spent an entire lifetime being rational and completely normal, and under the right circumstances, they will fall victim. You are not immune to this. And as long as you kind of have this idea, oh, well, there's just people that are, very stupid and they fall into this trap, you're not really going to get to the root of this issue because it can hit so many people. And this for me this is why it's great that we get into this moment of feeling, well, Zack is kind of this lovable goof, but there's all of these other people that are much more serious than him and portrayed much more seriously than him, that also fall into this category. So it's not that, oh, poor Zack, you're just an idiot, like this is why this is happening to you. It's no, the tactics that are being used on you are legitimately scary because they would work on a lot of people, and it's terrifying.
Yes, but also what I always have to have in mind there is that maybe I would guess probably half of the people are there like Zach and just getting caught after this. But you or another number, I don't know, I don't want to decide on that, but you also have in that room a certain number of people who are fully convinced and who are fully already convinced of that ideology, which is terrifying. And also that makes the Night Watch so terrifying is that you never know who you meet. Is it someone who is full into it and completely convinced, or is it someone like Zach who is just caught up and doesn't really know where her standing is? And you never know which one you have in front of you.
Question here is though, did this moment, this scene we had here, did this change Zach or maybe others that were just like him there for the money? Because what he experiences there is shame, and shame is a really, really good motivator for people to do different, to act different in the future. So the question is, will he act different? Will he now start reporting even such small things that are just stupid and cause, like things like we see here, or will he maybe quit, which would be the rational way I go out of this, but I do not see him doing this. So
I think a big element of this is what does Nightwatch get out of this? And Nightwatch gets now precedent of Zach doing this. So this time around, the question was, Zach, why won't you report? Everybody else is doing it. Like all the cool kids are doing it. Why won't you do it? Next time around, all they have to say is, well, you reported before. Why did you suddenly stop? Why are you changing your mind all of a sudden? Which is a much harder thing to go up against, right? And for everyone else in this room, Zach reported it. Zach is important. Zach is, pretty close to Garibaldi's second in command. So if, a high-ranking member of security did it, what's the harm in doing it yourself if you're a low-ranking member of security? You're just sitting in CNC. And I think the more they accumulate, like every single time somebody does this just because they're ashamed, the next time around, there's an obligation out of this because now the precedent is stronger. There's more social proof to do this. Like more people are doing it, and on paper it becomes more important, which I think this is the real strength of Nightwatch. In reality, all anybody has to do is ask, what exactly is Nightwatch? Like, who do you work for, actually? Are you part of mini-packs? Oh, no, you're not. Are you part of the military? Oh, you're also not. Then what the fuck are you doing here? This is just a hobby group now. Like, you don't actually hold any authority. You're not part of the government or elected anything. But the more people they can just cite as working for them, the more legitimate all of this looks. And suddenly it becomes very, very hard to go against this.
which is also the reason they are trying to get Ivanova in their ranks.
Oh, that was beautiful.
But I think this is also the terrifying part for me, that Mini-Packs is so powerful now that they send us the nice old grandpa and the sleazy salesman. They know that different people will take different approaches, and so they send folks with, that can put other levers on there. If the sleazy guy doesn't work on Ivanova, maybe the nice old grandpa will. She's somebody who likes Christmas. She even gives a Christmas present this time round. So
She's Jewish.
yeah, but she said, like, happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, whatever. She doesn't care that much about it. So, no, I think it's showcasing that they have gotten a lot more sophisticated than the angry shouting, pro-Earth, humanity first guys that we saw in the first season. This is a lot more refined, a lot more sophisticated now.
Yes, it definitely is.
I don't have anything to add to them at this point.
Okay.
I would take this maybe to just talk about the present Ivanova gives Sheridan, because I thought this really interesting. She gives Sheridan a shrapnel of the Black Star, which in the first moment I kind of found ironic. I don't know, here it's the I have a remnant of the big cruiser you just destroyed and killed people. But yeah, her intention was to give him something to remind that the impossible is possible, which is a far better and also I think in Sheridan's position important message for him. So I'm still not happy about this.
Next time it's Dylan over, it's gonna be really awkward if this is on his ship. Just what exactly do you have there, Sheridan? What's happening? Um, yeah, I wonder about this gift. Part of my quest, part of me wants to believe that Ivanova looked at mini packs coming around and is like, one of our strengths is that in Earth's image, Sheridan is still Starkiller, is still like very pro-Earth. I killed a lot of Minbari. So maybe giving him this symbolically just, makes this appearance a bit stronger, that to people back home, it still looks like, oh, his first officer gave him a piece of the alien ship he blew up. So he must still be like a hardline anti-alien guy we can probably trust in. I don't know, or maybe it's just that to her, the Minbari War is so much in the past now that it's more like, well, we're not as emotional about this anymore. We have grown past this.
Actually, I see Ivanova as someone who has a very, very dark and own sense of humor. So I think I could really just imagine her having I mean, we saw her handing it him, but I could also imagine her having a drink, handing it to him like, yeah, this is who we are. This shit just happens as we're here.
You better do your job well, or otherwise we're gonna look like that. So good luck. See you.
Yeah. Yeah, like also the message I like, but the gift itself I feel conflicted, and well, I don't think I want to elaborate it more because it's so complicated. There's so many facets on this.
In general, like shipwreck parts of war, an acquired taste in terms of memorabilia.
Yeah, I mean, if it would be, I don't know, a sunken piece of galleon from 1864 or something, I would say, yeah, okay, that has been long in the past. You can't anger anyone with that, hopefully. But this is just not long enough ago to say, yeah, we can put this in a showcase.
You see, this should have been our introduction question, but now it's gonna be our lurker question. What would you have gifted Sheridan? Personally, a tinfoil hat. I think this would be the perfect gift for him. A lot of red string for his conspiracy theories. But I'm curious what our lurkers would come up with if they get the chance to gift him something specifically in this year. Later on, it gets more complicated.
Honestly, I think I would have gotten the beer from the gift shop on Revenant Farm and bring and every time he puts this in space, get it back and put it again.
So just to say, the impossible, it will come back. It will haunt you until the end of your days. You can't get rid of it. Just like your responsibility to the station. Isn't that great? Oh, that's mean. All right. Odd. But obviously both of our mini packs members have to deal with something actually important happening on the station, which is a non-heavy cruiser shows up. I
Yep.
am very happy. I'm happy that such a big ship survived. I'm happy that there's this implication for a cool story with them that we sadly don't get to see. But no, it's great to see that, other Narn outside of Jakar managed to survive this war and managed to get to the station. And all of this obviously develops very quickly into a big diplomatic crisis where Sheridan does the right thing, grants them asylum, and Londo, still caught, on this terrible, terrible horse ride that he's on, holding on as much as he can, puts on this massive bluff, his government puts a big warship in front of the station, and now 2 seasons worth of Earth Alliance putting new weapons and new Star Furies on their training to fight against Centauri and such. All of this pays off when the Centauri are actually stupid enough to fire on a station with 250,000 civilians on it. So that's a great time. So obviously, pretty fireworks, big space battle, but in general about the situation, give me your thoughts.
They get what they deserved. So the whole situation is like, yeah, someone they get sanctuary from B5, and Lando is like, give me them. Yeah, shut the fuck up, honestly. Um, and they are trying, yeah, like you already say, they are trying to attack a station with so many civilians on. What were they expecting? But also this showcases the whole arrogance they gathered from their well, victory over the Narn. They think they can do this everywhere now. I mean, they're already in the action of doing so with, we know from the Pakmara and Razi. It's just that at B5 they're like, yeah, you get until here and not a step further.
I think for me, a bit of the question is how, like, where is the miscalculation on the Centauri's part? Like, did they already know, for example, that the treaty with Earth was going to take an effect? Like, did they expect that the timing would be just right so that there isn't an actual fight or something like that? Or are they really just this stupid? Because usually I try to make the argument that they are not just being this stupid because I find it not as interesting. But in this case, it may just very well be the case.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say stupidity in itself. It's just their arrogant assumption of, we are in a powerful position, we can do everything we want, and no one will stop us. And they are getting, therefore, in this position where someone is there saying, no, you can't do what you want. And yeah, I think that's the result. That's put that gets this ship destroyed. I mean, it's not like the that was the intention of B5. It's just the consequence through of the actions of the Centauri, because you can't just fire at someone and expect nothing back.
I mean, yeah, that's interesting because I see the miscalculation in the same way that they are kind of seeing themselves in this like victorious position, and Earth, from the official standpoint, actually supports that. So would just make it possible that the Centauri could just ride their wave of success. But then we have Babylon 5 in there, who doesn't who more and more starts to behave independently and is not on one course with Earth anymore. And I think that's the interesting part, that here we see that we have Earth and we have humans from Earth on the station, but the station's command is actually shaped by other decisions than those right now being done in Earth Dome.
I think it's also. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add that I also see that there's an arrogance in the Centauri thinking that every nation, every group, every race is functioning in the same way they are doing. I could totally see that they don't even, or wouldn't even think that B5 would act in any other way than what Earth Dome is doing. And maybe therefore they're just thinking, okay, we're safe, nothing will happen to us, because that would be the way with Centauri. Because if there's something like, okay, we are doing something to develop this, there would be no one working against this, or doing anything to destroy whatever they would be trying to achieve.
And to be fair, like, Earth itself is, we talked about this, is still under the impression that Sheridan is much more in line with Earth Dome's decision than he actually is, right? Like, this is his whole thing. And I think season 1 did this, where we had the whole episode Eyes, which is concerned with how do the actions of the commander look to the outside world. And I think if we put ourselves in the position of the Centauri, Sheridan took charge, and then the Tragati, this like legendary Minbari warship, showed up, and then it got destroyed. We saw the episode, we know that it got destroyed by a Minbari warship and that it was him actually diffusing the situation, but on paper, it's him taking charge and destroying this vessel. in a very xenophobic way, just as Earthdome would. So I think it's once again this, we as a viewer have a certain perspective, but to the Centauri, there might be a much better case that they have a different expectation. Another element that I find really interesting in a similar vein is Sheridan is being very pragmatic here, but one of the reasons the Centauri might have not expected such a big response is because Babylon 5 is a diplomatic station. Nobody told them that it got upgraded with new weapons and got a new fighter wing and all that kind of jazz. I think, Babylon 5 being able to take on a warship is not part of the design that the Centauri signed up for when they first sent their ambassador to the station. And, as much as we harken on the xenophobic stance and the militarism of Earth Alliance, in this situation, it was pretty damn convenient.
Yes.
Sheridan is willing to utilize this, like as much as he says this is not what the station stands for. At the end of the day, he's not above saying, well, we've got these teeth, we're going to use them. I think for the actual like confrontation, this is just about it. The one thing that I will mention is we talk about how naive or arrogant or however you want to call it the Centauri are being. They don't see Babylon 5 for what it is, and I think the Nan are actually like the Nan don't get much screen time with their little ship, but they are pretty much the polar opposite of that, right? They come to this station in hopes of help. They trust in the fact that they will be given sanctuary. They are, out of everyone, even in Earth Alliance, the last people that actually treat Babylon 5 still as this neutral harbor of peace. Everybody else is picking sides, and here's these guys that were on deep patrol somewhere and actually still see it as what it was supposed to be, which is kind of nice to see. But yeah, all of this leads us to this beautiful situation where Sheridan gets put into this position. Like, there's a lot of back and forth. Obviously, Minipax is not happy about what happened. And they have this wonderful exchange where, like, Sheridan is already very resigned and says, well, do you make me apologize for this? I assume this apology is already written. And this is my second favorite scene with our grandpa, who's like, no, of course not. That would be crazy. It's the thought that counts. So you can write whatever you want. Just make sure it is the correct thing. Like, don't do a thought crime otherwise. But it's completely free. It's such a, like, horrible instance of their doublespeak, and it's terrible. But I love the rehearsals that Sheridan does of the little speech.
Certainly.
Where he spells out all of the little things.
So,
Yeah.
can we start talking about the end of the episode?
Oh, Kefir dying, of course. Then turns
Now that you already mentioned the speech, maybe we can now really analyze the
About let's talk about the elephant in the room. The fucking angel. A fucking angel.
honestly. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking at first of all, of course, we would like to know how you find this reveal, and how so far it lines up with all of the other stuff you know about the Vorlons. Because yeah, that's what we would like to know, and then also in general, just how this moment feels and how you understand it. So, with what do you want to start?
Oh, 3-level question. I love it.
But my first reaction is I was short of before crying, and it was not out of joy, honestly. A fucking angel, really. But the overall idea that since they were like, I've seen this, that every, or at least a lot of races had like their, oh yeah, we have our, I don't know, savior or whatever, or deity seen there is interesting, but considering the Volons quite fucked up. I mean, they have been around and instilling in every race, or at least a lot of races, the themselves as some kind of deity, of savior, like making sure that they would trust them in the future because they are what they believe in. Which just makes the whole conception of Christianity like how long were they Volons around on Earth and like, yeah, okay, we now are constructing Jesus Christ. Congratulations. We just made a religion.
I will also find interesting there from Earth, we did not hear someone from another religion, I think. Because I think, yeah, what Ivanova saw probably wasn't so different because many of the symbols were kind of similar. But I think we had the discussion with two Narn who were fighting which one of their holy figures was in there because they saw different ones.
No, that weren't two Nards.
But
Nard, yeah.
I could assume the same thing.
Yeah, because
Like Natoth was there.
yeah, because I thought there were two Narn because they had the different prophets, because I could imagine that also to be the case. And what I found interesting, do you remember who didn't see anything?
Yes, that was interesting. That Lando said, "I saw nothing." That's really interesting. Which, if it is true that he really saw nothing, which I'm not quite sure I want to believe, would be interesting because that would mean that either the Volons didn't construct this connection to the Centauri, which would mean they already sorted them out very early to be considered, not quite sure, one of the good ones or whatever you want to name it, or that the Centauri eradicated everything the Volons might have constructed.
I mean, what's corroborating this a little bit is that we know the Centauri have this whole polytheistic ancestor worship going on, with like turning their own emperors into gods. So they don't really have the same sort of monotheistic, there is one prophet or one god or, one part of the Trinity that you could easily show. So that would fit either to this idea the Volons weren't there, or whatever religion they established has been eradicated or diluted or such to the point. I mean, there's definitely like questions about the mechanics of this, right? Like, would every human see something different? What would an atheist human see? Because those are more prominent. Is it really that the Volons came to Earth and established Christianity? Or did the Volons come to Earth and looked for the right religion that they found fitting and then just hijacked it? Like, was Kosh Jesus Christ, or did he just assume the name at some point? Is kind of the gist here. I mean, I think this is going beyond what the show really has in mind. But I mean, in recent times, especially, in communities on the internet, there's, much more popularity also given to this idea of the biblically accurate angel. Like, we are getting more aware of the fact that the two-winged figure that is on the mural in the church is not exactly the same thing that people would have imagined very early on in Christianity. So there is at least this hint that the form that Kosh assumes is something that is a little bit personalized, that speaks to whoever is seeing him, which I think.
And then, of course, there's a question of how is he able to achieve that? How is he doing that?
How much control does he have?
How much control does he have? Yeah. So, would we still do we still want to trust the Volons after this, or does this already feel so fucked up that we say, you know what?
I think installing yourself as a god so that everybody worships you, thinking back to Stargate, is a bad guy thing to do.
And I mean, after this moment, actually, I was really hooked. I really wanted to know what this was all about. This felt so honest. It still felt so sci-fi, but it also felt so mystical. And yeah, it drove me crazy. I had to go on watching after that.
I think you weren't part of the discussion when we talked about Comes the Inquisitor, right? Or I did like a next separate discussion with you, Mike, about that. And one of our questions there was like, what's the deal with Jack the Ripper? Like, did they establish this myth themselves? Did they pick the guy did they pick the guy because he believed himself to be chosen by God? And like, in light of the Volons themselves depicting themselves as angels, for one, the first meeting between Jack the Ripper and the Volons is a lot more concrete to me now, because they would have literally been the god he was obsessed with telling him, this was a bad thing to do. So that's a fun image in my head. But the Valons have such a weird obsession with picking people that they find symbolically relevant, and it's always this really obsessive religious angle that they're going for. And that is just kind of sketchy because, like, why not just talk to us, people? Like, if you're an alien and you want to make contact with humanity in a way that doesn't freak humanity out, just become the little gray dude in a UFO that we always imagine in our movies. And we know how to deal with this. We constantly think about this scenario. That wouldn't freak us out. Why an angel?
I'm not sure. I would think that it has something to do with believers, with faith, that maybe it's simpler to connect this way with these people. I'm not that type of person to be able to emotionally get behind all this idea. So
Yeah, I mean, when I meet people, I also prefer them worshiping me instead of, top beat me. It's so much easier.
Yeah, but it's only bread and wine. Like, what are you supposed to do with that?
the religion.
Fine. But then the Centaur religion would be fantastic. But I mean, no, in all seriousness, it does definitely give us a lot of hints how the Vorlons choose to interact with the universe, which is not on an even footing. There's a very clear hierarchy here, and there is a very big expectation. Like everything that the Inquisitor, and I keep referring to the Inquisitor because he was up to this point the most direct mouthpiece of the Vorlons that we had. Kosh only talks in riddles, so he's not helpful. But the Inquisitor talked about willingness to sacrifice for a cause without knowing that everybody will worship you and such. These are all very martyr-themed ideas. So there's definitely this idea that the Vorlons have a certain flavor to them in their culture, and it's not a Star Trek style enlightened utopia where everybody is equal and recognized for their worth. It's a much more, there's a higher cause, we are the prophets of it, you will goddamn follow that.
It has more the feeling of we are the important ones and you are our workforce.
Yes, you are our workforce as a good description so far.
Because if you instill all this you will not be worshipped. You are just the one to do the job, to sacrifice if necessary. You keep them down, keep the people down, and make sure that they will do what you want them to do.
But then let's consider the context where all of this is true. We have good reasons to be very skeptical about the Vorlons. I mean, we had good reasons for this ever since they blew up the ship with the immortality serum. But all that being said, they established themselves as angels. They set everything up for thousands of years so that one day they can reveal themselves and be worshipped as gods. But instead, Sheridan has to jump out of a train because it gets blown up by Centauri, completely randomly, and Kosh decides to save him. After relatively recently giving him a big, long lecture how he is not the chosen one, and Delenn is not the chosen one, and they, must be ready to sacrifice themselves.
No, he didn't give that lecture.
Okay.
Because in the end, Jack the Ripper decided that they were the chosen ones and that they were correct.
The right people at the right time, sure, but for all this talk of selfless sacrifice still that they give there here, at least to me, maybe for you guys this is different, but for me this feels like a disconnect. The act of blowing your cover and doing this legitimately dangerous and exhausting thing to save Sheridan doesn't seem like the thing that the Vorlons who set themselves up as angels would necessarily do. That seems more benevolent to me. Or how do you feel about this?
I feel rather practical about this because, I mean, they worked on let's say curating Sheridan and Delenn in their position with their knowledge, with their power and everything else. And it's like 5 before 12.
Okay.
If they would lose Sheridan now, there would be no one to replace him.
Okay. I can see
I would see this like saving your assets.
I think the only thing that keeps me from thinking just in these very practical terms about this is that Delenn is kind of pleading with Kosh here. And I mean, it could be definitely the case that Kosh would have saved him anyway, just because he has this calculus. I already like put Jack the Ripper on ice again. I don't want to throw him off another time to find another chosen one, so fine. But I don't know. I still get kind of the impression that it's Delenn kind of talking him into this a little bit and saying like, hey, if you're gonna do something, do it now. And that maybe the calculus there was a chance for the calculus to go a different way if she didn't do that.
There probably was a chance, but I also think that in this interaction with Delenn, with whom he has, I think, on the station established the most personal contact and the most intense relationship so far, that he realizes that now he has all of the people in place and it would be much more complicated to get another person in place. So maybe it tipped it over a little bit, but I also think it's very likely that he would have done something anyways. That was actually what made me so curious the first time I watched this, because actually I was not as negative the first time I watched this. I was just that I thought, oh my god, this is cool. Now we have angels and kind of this is all turned super spiritual, and I really like that. I love it when we have aliens that are gods. I love Stargate. I was like, I found that super nice, and I was so excited. And I also kind of felt like, can this show actually give me like a positive perspective on religion? I thought, because I grew up so super religious and there was nothing positive about that. So I thought, oh, maybe I can get like this new experience with this show. So I was super positive the first time. And really was like, oh, what's happening now? It's so cool.
I mean, I will give them that. Having a religion with a prophet that actually, gets off his ass and saved the chosen one for once, that's a big step forward in terms of what most religions or cults deliver. So there's definitely something to that.
Anything more?
I mean, we can't talk about this whole scene without mentioning Jakar hiding in the bushes of the Zen garden. It's amazing and I love it. And like as much as I like the reveal of Kosh as the angel, I would have loved to see how this entire meeting would have played out, with Sheridan's speech, with Jakar hiding in the bushes, with Londo getting an aneurysm over how insolent all of these people are being to him. Like, this would have been a great finale either way, even if they didn't try to blow Sheridan up.
I would be interested to see what exact speech Sheridan would give. Would he really apologize, or would he really have a moment there and like, oh, fuck it all, I tell you what I honestly think?
Maybe Kosh would have had to reveal himself anyway, just because the speech was so bad that everyone's, oh look, there's an angel, don't pay attention to the crazy captain that is personally declaring war on the entire Centauri Republic right now.
But now that we had that, now I also think maybe Kosh wanted to reveal himself, because I think that he knew that there was a bomb on this train, because I think this information could have reached him easily. And maybe he was waiting to be backed to have this effect, and maybe he wanted this moment to turn this moment of this questionable speech into something symbolic, because he needs that. Maybe that was also all calculated to then have this angel reveal.
I mean, he is also massively telepathic. Maybe he actually...
You already know that he is massively telepathic.
I mean, we know that the encounter that Lita had in the very, very beginning, like, was a very big deal, because having a telepath interact telepathically with him. And he has this, like, connection to his ship, so...
So yeah, he is massively telepathic, so he definitely knew about the bomb.
No, I wanted to make a different point with that also. Like, maybe he also knows that Kefir is going on his little mission. So maybe he knows that, oh, there is going to be this big reveal about the creepy spider ships happening, so I need to set a counterweight to that. I need to have also the big reveal of an angel or something like this. Like, I wouldn't even put this past him, that this was a motivator. That I can definitely see.
Then I think if we are finished with this, we have to talk about the epilogue narrated by Ivanova, by Susan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, if you wouldn't have mentioned, I would have forgotten this. At least that it's her. Uh, and I'm not quite sure what it was, but that it was it's a bit of rephrasing the opening phrase. Last best hope for peace is turned into what?
Last best hope for victory. I mean, I'm not surprised that it's Ivanova doing this because this is very much her mindset. Everything can get worse, and it will. So, I mean, it's not that we learn a whole lot more here, I don't think, but we get to see Londo gesticulating in the council chambers, declaring war on even more people, and being this, emblematic.
Well, and I mean, we get an interesting point of view from her, which I think also in our political situation, like globally at the moment, is very, very relevant. That sometimes, how does she say it? Sometimes peace, like keeping peace on is, she says peace, but I understand it as keeping the peace under any circumstances possible is just surrendering, meaning that when there's something evil in the world, sometimes as bitter as it is, you have to fight and face it. That is in the speech, and that's what I find interesting, that it shifts towards, we wanted to keep peace and we just can't. Keeping peace right now as Earth is trying is just inhumane, so we have to accept that there will be a fight.
I think she's kind of commenting on the stuff that Minipax was saying, but also the mission of Babylon 5 overall. And I mean, we've seen this in recent wars ourselves, where the top argument to kind of abide by dictators and tyrants is to say, well, war is bad and I don't want people to die, so everybody just lay down your arms and not fight anymore, and we will just do whatever it takes for that. It's very easy, if you have a station that is made for keeping the peace, to co-opt that into basically standing by and doing nothing. And she's making a very strong case that this is not the same thing. Like, you can't just keep the peace at any cost if doing so means sacrificing everything, like Alpha just done.
Yes, and especially the point is, if you have someone like the Centauri attacking you at some point, if you do nothing, you won't be there anymore. So you just have the option of doing nothing and dying, or fighting with hope. And this is also what I see in her rephrasing this opening scene, that she is saying, yeah, we don't have that, but we can have this.
Very much just this idea that in everything that she says, she's forcing us out of this black and white thinking of, it's not just there is war and that is bad, and there's peace and that is good, and if you fight any war, that is just bad. And she's also forcing us out of, either this station is the station of peace, or it has failed and should be thrown away. It kind of gives us, well, no, things are really bad. A lot of shit is going bad, but that doesn't mean the right action is to do nothing and stand by it. It means you have to take different actions and adapt.
Yeah, it's out of this polarization between 2 points, that it's not just one side and the other, but it's a spectrum.
Yeah. All the while delivered with the very big knowledge. This does suck. And it's going to keep sucking for a long time. There's going to be boom tomorrow. I think this is why it's great that she's delivering this, because she doesn't do this as like a big triumphant and everything will be fine. It's like, no, I'm just saying we are not doomed yet. That is all.
Yes, and her practical side, with certainly a bit dark tendency, is still, there is hope. Not everything is lost. There's a lot of things that turned out bad, but it's not the end.
Yeah.
And I think also that's a very important message she's delivering here, and that couldn't have anyone else put out there this way.
Very much. As much as I would have loved like a London narrated epilogue to this year, I don't think he could have had the same impact. But okay, I think this is a pretty good way to end this episode discussion and end an entire year. We are basically going through the show in real time right now, a season.
No, we are trying to get to become quicker. Actually, this was a lot of fun. I want to do it again very soon.
Yes, we have some plans for that.
We are the goodest here on YouTube because here you can see us.
Yes, and here's also the best place to leave your answers to the lurker's question of what would you have gifted Sheridan for this question.
We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we hope you see us on the next one. Until then.